Emotions Matter, brought to you by emaw.com. That's EMAWW.com, your solution for emotional intelligence. Welcome to the Emotions Matter podcast. Our guest on this episode is Julia Smith, who is the founder of Inner Tranquility and Peace based in Sydney, Australia. Julia has been immersed in the emotional connection that music has on people since grade school, delivering outstanding results during exams for the Australian Music Examinations Board. While her professional career took a diversion into the finance industry, she continued to research, define, and develop the technology for using sound, color, and vibration therapies to eradicate negative energies which exist in our bodies. Welcome, Julia. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you, John. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Terrific. Well, all right, let's just get started. You've been concentrating your energy on the values of music, sounds, and colors since a really early age. Why don't you give our listeners some perspective as to when the breakthrough really happened in your life that really began to, let's call it, connect the dots?
Yeah, sure, John. I'm happy to share my story and my journey around how I landed up doing what I'm doing today, which I absolutely love. So as a child, I was born very sensitive and I was very shy and very inward. And I found it hard to go to school. And I found it hard to meet new people, and I really had to sort of force myself to engage. And my parents really instilled in me that just don't be ridiculous, just get out there type of thing. And so also my grandmother and her sister were very proficient musicians, and my aunt was a violinist in an orchestra, and my grandmother was a teacher of piano and taught in high school at high grade level of piano. And so she started teaching me when I was about 7. And to be honest with you, I really hated it. I used to hide under the bed when she used to come over, and my parents sort of understood that I just wasn't comfortable being taught by my grandmother. But I started up with the lessons not long after that. And I found that, first of all, I really loved playing the piano. But by the age of about 10, where I'd been playing for quite a few years, and I started to become quite proficient and had worked my way up, some of the grades. And you could actually then play music that was a little bit more complex, and actually I could get right through the piece and not sort of make a mistake, that I dove in very deeply with my emotions. Mm-hmm. And I found that there were certain pieces of music I wanted to play over and over again, and it was doing some sort of alchemy within my body. Mm. And then by the time I was about 14 and I was still playing the piano, I'd advanced through the grades, I was playing quite complex music by then, and it was actually transporting me into other realms where I was very deeply immersed in my emotions, and I found it was taking me places where I just wasn't experiencing it in everyday life. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that was the first major dot where there was this huge unlocking of the sea of emotions within us. And sometimes that would take me into frustration because I wanted to play more complex music, but I wasn't ready for that. But on the other hand, it would take me to these extreme realms of joy and happiness. And it was sort of taught me I didn't want to stop playing, I suppose is the way to say it. And so I'd play for quite a few hours every day. And so that was sort of my first major key. Then as I grew older into being an older teenager and into my early 20s, I emerged into the realms of that personal development age we went through. And this really deep discovery of who am I started. And I did a lot of workshops and courses around, how are we built the way we are built, about imprinting, that we're highly programmed beings. And I started really looking at what did I what was I imprinted from by my parents and my grandparents and those who are close around me, and then into the school system and people who impacted my life. And it could have been in a more distressing way, or it could have been in a more joyful way. And I started unraveling all these emotions, because one of the things that drove me to do the self-exploration is because I was so shy. And when I worked in finance, it's very hectic. Everyone's personalities are quite extreme. And I found I became adrenally fatigued. And so I worked in finance for about 12 years. And then after that, once I'd had my daughter, I worked for a philanthropist for 8 years, and I was working with all his investments. And during that phase, I was going through this self-exploration. And, you do go through these phases when you do that of sort of there's a bit of blame on your parents and why did this happen to me? And this little bit of victimhood comes out. And then when in 2007, this was the next major key for me, is my life hit a crisis. And I was really wanting to take a step back and take time out for me. And I started doing a lot of meditation. And so I decided I was going to make 2007 was my year, and I was going to meditate, and I was going to go deep into the dissolving of some of these emotions that I really felt were holding me back, because I wanted to become more public, because my music came in at that period and I felt awkward bringing it forward. And so when I started doing this meditation, I literally was sitting there with a cup of tea. And I actually did not realize it at that time that I'm actually very good at meditation, but I went deep in contemplation, and I'd actually just listened to Oprah. And I don't listen to Oprah a lot at that time. I was just too busy to be spending time doing that. But there was one key program I saw, and it was about Eckhart Tolle. And he was talking about the power of now and how everything is united into one. And so I sat there going in this contemplative mode, how on earth are we all one when we're all individuals? That was to me like ridiculous. And I went in deep with this state, and I literally went into a void type of environment within myself. And I was really asking the universe, how are we all one? And literally, I saw the words come in, slam me in the forehead, saying, sound waves, vibrational waves. And I just got it. And seriously, I've linked it back to that moment as a child when I understood emotions. I instantly understood emotions are energy. And so when you have activated certain emotions, you've activated that energy. And so literally my life turned away from finance, and I just started doing a lot of research around energy, around sound, and around notes in the scale, and about music, certain music and how it's being constructed. And look, it was widely known even in 2007 how the music of Mozart and Bach is highly activating music, and to play it to children is highly beneficial. It creates positive neuron pathways in the mind. And so I really started heading in that direction. And so what happened for me in that moment was my whole life path changed direction. And this is the definition of a true epiphany. An epiphany is where you have such a profound realization that your whole life changes completely. And that is actually what happened to me, because within 4 months of me having that realization and starting this investigation process, all that I work with today came together. And so for me, it unfolded in I connected with equipment that contains speakers that have been constructed in a very specific way, and the soundtracks of music notes that you play through this table, and it converts it into a vibration. And so when you lay on this table that I have, I'm literally playing a hertz frequency sound note through your body. And because our body is 70% water and a lot of bone, these are very good conductors of energy waves and sound note waves. And so literally you're tuning your body to that frequency. So what I found, and using my family as guinea pigs as well as myself, I found that it really was about our nervous system. And because I'd have adrenal fatigue from just my personality and also working in finance, I found my whole body and my organs started to calm right down, and also my mind calmed right down, and I started accessing more of the right side of my brain. My brain, the right side, started communicating sort of in a more positive way with the left side of the brain, like I had even more ideas coming forward and then flowing into the left side of the brain, which is all about logic, about information. And I could have what I wanted to gel was really flowing. Mm-hmm. And I actually found this was really a deep, profound thing with my husband, who's a chartered accountant, and he's Scottish. And so he was sort of pretty locked into some of his behaviours, and he started opening up this vocabulary within him. And so this was my confirmation around this was really working. And so then I actually started meeting the musicians who were writing music, that they were writing alpha state music, was written around certain keys of music, which connects with chakras in our body. So look, I came from a finance background, which is very intellectual, and I was having to open up myself to willingness to learn about this energetic side of our body. And because I was a bit of an investigator, I was wanting to see the proof in what Eastern philosophies were talking about as aspects of our human nature, with the intellectual data side, which I found was the Western side were really getting into that as well. So these were the major keys that happened to me in my life. And in the last 10 years, when I've really been putting together my programs and seeing a lot of clients, not only have I found everyone's different, and I'm having to treat everyone individually into what their needs are. So what I find with people who turn up for me is that they've got some block happening and they just can't move forward. So whether it's they have problems with public speaking, they get very nervous with that, or they get very angry and we're looking for the triggers around that, or whether they've had a trauma happen in their life, like a divorce or a death or something, there's always something underlying these emotions that hold us back. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I've been doing over the last 10 years, is working with people and unlocking them so they're free and they connect with self-love, with acceptance of who they are, and that life is a playground for exploration. And it's about living in the now and letting go of judgment of ourselves and of expectations of ourselves, so we can just move into the freedom.
Mm-hmm. So, Julia, you mentioned a bed that your clients lie on to feel the vibrations from the soundtracks. What other instruments do you employ in your therapy?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks, John. I actually do have one particular instrument that I find is really quite amazing. I call it my tubular crystal harp, and it's not a traditional harp. It's rather an instrument that has tubes of crystal, but they're in a line. So when you hold them up, they could look like strings, I guess, but they're obviously quite thick. But this harp has 10 tones or hertz frequency sound notes, known for their transformational impact on the human body. And so what I find is when I play this instrument, and usually that's at the beginning of the appointment, because I find once I play that first, they drop into this zone of going within. And so I play the crystalline notes in a sweeping motion, and because crystal is known to amplify sound, what's happening is the sound note and the hertz frequency that I'm playing is amplified and really moves in lightning speed through their energy field and into their body and penetrating to the cellular level, and it's speaking to their DNA, it's speaking to their nervous system, it's speaking to the fundamental structure of our body, and it's, in my opinion, it's dissolving and cutting away what's not aligned to that hertz frequency that I'm playing for them. And I've found that it's a very celestial sound because it's made of crystal. It's very, all I can say is it's very celestial. It's really beautiful. And I get a lot of amazing feedback, what people feel and what they see, and intuitive knowings that drop in for them. And so I've been integrating that into my appointments, but I've also just started doing public events with it for people like in those meditation circles and people who are into music and sound and using it in sort of different ways. They're really interested in the delivery of these sound notes in a unique and different way, because not only is it highly beneficial, but it's actually fun and interesting to see because it's different. Mm-hmm. So they're really loving that. And I'm finding that because I'm the one playing it all the time, it's also working on me all the time. So there's sort of like a double benefit there.
Right.
Yes. But I find that people are actually coming back and saying they want a bit to finish off the appointment, for instance, with this harp. So they want more of it. So I'm always playing with what's out there that can enhance what I'm delivering, is enhancing the experience for the people coming, and is actually fast-tracking them in what they're trying to do and achieve.
Well, that sounds fascinating.
Thank you.
So, Julia, during your research, were there any countries or religions or societies or anything like that that particularly stood out to you that really kind of embodied your vision?
Absolutely. And I want to say that this really started for me with Western research, and a lot of people are doing a lot of working with music and with these sound frequencies, the hertz frequency numbers, and what information is carried on that energy wave. And I actually was really surprised that this was being, one of my greatest platforms is the research that's been done in America and in Europe. And there have been some amazing people that have committed their whole lives to documenting and doing actual studies with people around what they're discovering. And I sort of felt that I actually don't know where their journey started, but I feel that, like for me, it started like they woke up one day and just had this amazing thought. And it just drove them to find out more about that. Mm-hmm. And I call that true science. Mm-hmm. A lot of science now is outcome driven, where people want products brought forward and they want the proof that it's going to work. And so they ask scientists to say, prove this for me. Whereas true science to me is around, you don't have the answers. You start with a theory and you go sort of hell for leather with, what does this mean? What are the angles? And what is the best way to collect the data, so that I can actually put together a picture of what is happening that's going to be useful for people. And quite often they do bring forward products that are going to help us. And so I've found that there have been scientists, usually they're sort of physics-trained people or people that have had a musical background, so they're actually very mathematical people, and they have activated their intuitive side of themselves, and they sort of just know where to go with it. So in America, like people like Jonathan Goldman have done a lot of work there, and in Europe there are scientists who have been working with autism and those spectrum type of illnesses with people, and illnesses that are a bit left field, trying to help them with pain, and it's around pain management, so fibromyalgia, that sort of thing. So for me, it started with that, and this is where the soundtracks came from. So I've got 61 different hertz frequency soundtracks I work with, and I also work with brainwave type of music, which you listen through headphones, and it's working with the actual brain. Because what I have found in my journey is that we're quite complex beings. So we have 4 aspects to ourselves. We have our physical body, with the nervous system that runs obviously right throughout our whole being. Then we have our mind, And our mind is very powerful. Let me tell you, the ego mind is something we really are having to work with. Then we have our emotional aspect, and then we have our more, people call it our spiritual aspect. I sort of more call it our energy body, where everything is vibrating. This has been my major key. Everything vibrates. Science proves this. We are taught this in high school, where energy waves connect everything and everything is vibrating. We are vibrating. And I really connected with this information in, well, what are we vibrating then? And what it is that the whole package of ourselves, the four aspects combined together, get our median rate of vibration that we are emitting all the time. And so if we're pretty laden down with painful emotions, I don't want to call them negative emotions because it sort of brings in judgment with that, but if we're in the spectrum of painful emotions, it means we've got quite slow energy running through our body, and what we want to do is dissolve that so we can bring in faster speed. And it's the speed that's really important. And David Hawkins, he was a scientist that did a lot of research around speed of energy and the speed of our emotions and our thoughts. And this is what's going to create our median vibration that we're sending out, and that's going to attract in what experiences we're going to have. So if we've got triggers that are still activated with us that are painful, we can actually run loops that are going to keep recreating these experiences for us in different ways. And this is what I'm finding with clients, is they're starting to notice the repetitive patterns. Mm-hmm. And so then we've got something tangible to work with because they know it's happening and they're sick of it and they're ready for change. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about with the countries, which was what your question was, is I then started looking at other countries, what are they doing? And it was more with Eastern cultures, it's this ancient knowledge, but they sort of present it in a different way. Theirs is more, they just play these instruments that are tuned to certain keys, and I don't even know if they know they are tuned to these keys. Actually, they must do, because they know, they can feel where it's affecting them in certain parts of their body. And this is what I have found with the musical notes, because I got into the whole singing bowl thing, which, you know, people who do chanting or have been to India many times and have done the Tibetan monk experience, mm-hmm. they notice it with these singing bowls, and they actually are addressing certain vibrations in your body and moving them into the faster speed of that vibration. And this is why some people actually get quite addicted to either going to these events or playing these instruments, is because they can feel that there's something going on for them and it's positive. Mm-hmm. And so now I've just found I'm integrating sort of the two in terms of some aspects of the way Eastern culture work with the energy. I found very beneficial, but I sort of always like to bring it back into a more grounded way of presenting it, which is in our Western ways. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how I tend to have been operating.
So it's interesting that you talked about the key of music. Mm-hmm. I had a personal experience. I used to be a disc jockey in nightclubs and in radio. And what we found was that throughout the evening, if I was playing music that was in major keys, it was a happier feeling. As I went through the evening, as the music became more modern or new age or new wave music, etc., the keys tended to be more minor keys. And what mm-hmm. we tended to find out was that as I played the music that was in more of a minor key, what we found was people became angrier. And mm-hmm. we tended to have more instances of people fighting, right? So as the evening wore on, people would get into arguments and stuff. And then I would have to turn it back to, you know, the difference between playing U2 versus Michael Jackson, for instance, right? Big
very
difference,
interesting.
Right? Difference in the key of music and the feeling that you actually got. So I'm curious, as we go through, as we talk about that and the key of the music, et cetera, you mentioned Mozart and Bach. So I'm not a classical music aficionado by any stretch of the imagination. Talk to us a little bit about that music and how it actually does affect your inner vibrations. I want to come back to that because I want to get specifically into you going into, for the benefit of our listeners, sort of a methodology for determining what the right balance of sound and color or vibration therapies for releasing things like emotional tension. So if you could talk to us a little bit about that and the methodologies you use.
Okay, so John, that's a very good question. And actually, it's a very profound observation you had around the flat or the minor keys, the music and the effects it was having on the audience. Because minor keys are music written in the flat keys. And how interesting is it that they've actually used the terminology in music of flat? So when you play a flat key like B flat, or G, F flat, or what? I don't think there is an F flat actually, but so a flat key, A flat, say, they are the more mournful vibrations of music. And I really noticed this as a kid playing classical music, because I was classically trained on the piano, is it would really awaken the sorrowful aspect of emotions within ourselves. And so some people, they enjoy this because it's a very emotional state to go into. But as you've seen with audiences, and I do feel that when you've got a group of people collectively in a room and they're all listening to the same piece of music, but they're actually all got their own way of responding to it. But then suddenly you've got a collective energy running, because all these people's vibrations that they're emitting from themselves become a pea soup within the room. And so suddenly you've got this median vibration in the room as a whole. And I find it very interesting that they became very agitated. A lot of anger came up and fighting broke out, because in my view, in this time we're in right now, there is a lot of anger in our society. And so a lot of people are actually having, hopefully they're seeking help for this angry emotions coming up for them, because it really does need to be addressed. So it's one thing to say I'm angry, and it's really good to acknowledge it. But it is really important to take that next step to actually address it. Because the next thing you led to in your question is around, what can people do using sound and colour and vibrational therapies with helping themselves with these emotions. And so my approach is with this is that, it's really important and really beneficial to include using sound frequencies and music, but also colour rays and different vibrational therapies that are of the higher frequency. Like, to me, that's the major keys. So in music, we call it the major key, like G major, C major, keys which are uplifting, they're higher emotions, they make you feel happy and joyful. They're the keys that unlock that aspect to ourselves. And so the first step in addressing ourselves really as a society is people need to take responsibility, for their emotions, and that I'm an emotional being. My emotions are a key aspect of living on earth and incarnating and having life on earth. It's the reason that we're born, is we come here to experience all emotions. And so once we realize that and accept that as part of ourselves, we can then move into acknowledging, this is what's activated in me right now. And then you can ask the question, is it serving me? And is it serving my life? Is it serving my life direction? And it's actually beneficial to the people around me, because, hello, I'm projecting this onto other people. And this is not creating healthy interactions and relationships. And to me, one of the major key things in living is our relationships, interacting with other people. And once our energies come together, as we come together in a group or individually, and we start having an experience with each other, what's going on in the interaction? Are these the interactions I want to be having? Do I want to have an optimal outcome, or do I want to have some sort of unknown direction and triggering going on, and I walk away going, at best, what the hell happened there? Or at you walk away thinking, is this what I want? And, then you've got all these open loops with people where it just didn't go the way that was best for each other. Once we move into it, just accepting that this is what's going on, you can then move into willingness to do something about it. And once you start walking the path of willingness to look at myself, be real about yourself, and write down some of the things and observations that are going on and some of the patterns that are emerging in, because all these interactions really are our clues. Mm-hmm. They're giving us a clue and a window into ourselves. And if we can just sort of brave up a bit, because it is painful. It's painful looking at this stuff. And I've had to walk it, and the people that come to see me are walking it. And so many people are walking it. It's just quite incredible. Really are in a phase in human evolution where we're actually having to choose, do I want to sink or do I want to swim? Mm-hmm. And if you want to get to the end of your life and look back and think, wow, I had a rich life and I did the best I could and I really stepped up and I took on the chin what I needed to be doing. I knew I needed to be doing it and I did it. And then you can actually start looking out there in the world and what can help me. And this is what I find is that people turning up here realise that it all doesn't have to be hard work. Because when you start using sound and music and colour and other vibrational tools, it actually simplifies the job. Because the other thing you can combine it with, obviously, is psychological help, where you actually just go and sit and talk to people and just get it off your chest. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like getting it off your chest and you have a good cry, or one of the huge keys is moving into forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Forgiving yourself. Right. Forgiving others in these events that have happened in our lives. And sometimes they really are a big deal. Some people have had some really big things happen, and going through the process of acknowledging, accepting and forgiving so you can let go. And then this is a really big thing, is moving into self-love. To me, when we really want to move into loving ourselves, is you are really opening up the door to having such a much better life. Because once you move into self-love, like this is my package right now, and I'm doing what I can to move through change, and I'm willing to change, and I'm actually excited about finding out who I am going to be once I start letting go of these things I've been hanging on to, this baggage, and what's going to emerge out of that. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, it's been these amazing gifts that I didn't even know I had. When I had that epiphany in 2007, I was in a pretty chaotic state. And I worked really hard, especially in the first few years, of doing exactly this, which was walking through, what am I doing? Actually, the phrase was, what on earth am I doing? I was thinking oh my God, I'm here for a reason and I need to find out what it is. And it turned out I went full circle on my training as a child in music. Obviously, I have a lineage with music as a talent in my family, and unlocking it in this way I never anticipated would happen, that I would have people come and lie on this table, that I'd be able to intuit what the music is they need to be experiencing, that was going to deactivate the lines of energy that don't serve and activate the energy within them that was going to really open them and expose them to experiences of their better self. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's exciting.
It is.
It's very exciting.
So as you see these patients, and I'm assuming you have an interview with them, et cetera, those kinds of things, do you find that there are some therapies that are more effective for treating emotional tensions versus are based maybe for treating the emotional tensions that are based on anger versus grief or fear? Are there different therapies that are more effective for one or either of any of those?
That's a good question. And I look at the end of the day, the way I approach it with different people. One is I find men are different to women. I tend to approach them differently. I speak to them a little bit differently, and I find the interview process is critical. So when they first arrive, this is sort of a little bit hard to explain, I suppose I would say, is I find I embrace my interaction with the person as the whole person. So I've learned to work with energy where I feel my whole body. And when they walk in the door, I'm feeling their whole body. And I really start to get a feeling of how tense they are. Then once they start to speak, I understand the sort of language that they can actually hear with. Like, I want to speak to them in a way that's going to open the door for them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm listening for the key words that they speak with. I can tell by the tone of their voice how uptight they are, how willing they are to go deep. Some people, it's going to take a while for them to open up. Mm-hmm. And I always am looking for them to be comfortable. So there's no rush. There's no pressure. There's no performance required or that you have to be doing a certain thing. This is an organic process, and I want it to be an experience that you're enjoying and that you're walking away thinking, wow, it might feel like a small piece, but sometimes the small pieces are very significant. But at the end of the day, it's their journey, and I respect them where they're at every step of the way. Because what I have found on the more, I suppose we'll call it the spiritual side or the soul's journey, which is a very important part, because at the end of the day, we're wanting to open ourselves to our true essence and be vibrating where we're baggage-free and we're just in pure self-expression and loving it. And we are excited by it. But some people are very inhibited because they've had these experiences and they're carrying these energies that have locked it up. And so I want them to enjoy every step of the way. And this is the soul's journey. And it's also the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell wrote about the hero's journey. And I feel this is making our lives a very rich experience when we allow ourselves the time and the space to experience the whole thing. And so this is the first thing I do, is during the conversation, we have a bit of a chat around what's going on in their lives and why are they here, what are they noticing about themselves, and what's their intention for the time we're spending together in this session. Mm-hmm. Then what I find from that conversation is the frequencies that they are needing tend to come forward. Out of 61, I can narrow it down to about 3 just from the conversation. Mm-hmm. So then by the time they hop on the table, I've got a pretty good feel of where to go with that. So I will start playing the sound frequency that it's a vibration, and it starts to massage every cell in the body. It's very relaxing. And so their whole body drops into this state of calm, relaxation. The nervous system immediately starts to calm down. And quite often they'll start telling me more information just because they feel more relaxed. And I find then the bond between them and I deepens into trust, and they can feel that I am there for them 100%. And even just with their energy and the way that their state of being, I can feel the relaxation kicking in. Then I pop the headphones on and I play the music that contains sound frequencies that's going to work on the mind and start raising the brainwave patterning, building new neuron pathways that are positive, and just dissolving the neuron pathways that carry those negative critical thoughts that we just do not want. Mm-hmm. They can have the opportunity to start falling away. Then I start bringing in the colour therapy. Now, colour I have found is equally as powerful as sound notes or sound frequencies, in that their spectrum as a Hertz frequency is the same as a sound note. So I can actually shine a colour ray that is the tone of D or G or C, and it's shining through their energy. And because our cells can receive light, because obviously we receive sunshine, so our energy and our physical body receive light not just on our skin but right through our whole being. Mm-hmm. We start receiving that colour, and I'm finding that the colour adds to the fuel of moving their energy from the slower frequency of painful emotions into the higher frequency of joyful emotions. Mm-hmm. And I actually have people, they will at the end of the session say they saw a lot of colours, like their eyes are shut and they're asleep, they're half asleep, and they go into the alpha theta state of meditation, they're seeing colours or they're seeing some significant event that happened for them. They're having a very interactive experience, even though they're asleep. Mm-hmm. So, we obviously have these aspects to ourselves that are very informational, and it tells us a lot about ourselves. I find these things we can then start unlocking what created the trigger in the first place, so that we can then, sometimes if we get an idea of what it was that triggered us, we can then move into the forgiveness in a more real way, if you like. Quite often I find they get up and they say, I just feel so much better, and they walk away and it just doesn't come back. And they don't need to know. But other times the relief comes in because they think, oh, wow, that's what it was. I get it now. Look, what happened with my mum when I was 9, it just doesn't matter anymore. And that's, and they can walk away and they're whistling and skipping down the road. And that's the whole point. And, I realised about the journey of experiencing and acknowledging these painful emotions, we actually get such a contrast in who we are. And even though we don't really want to be having these painful emotions, once we're out the other side and they're not there anymore, we can look back and think, wow, look, how brave was I to actually face up to that? Mm-hmm. How courageous am I that I stepped up? And how the relief that I'm feeling right now is really profound. And I would never feel that if I hadn't have been down that road. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me ask you, I was just, as I'm going through the process that you spoke about, it's, other than the interview process, it's a very passive sort of experience.
Very passive.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a therapy for a client, say they come in and they want to increase versus decrease a specific energy. So maybe in other words, what if a client asks you, said they want you to increase, they have a lack of love, emotional energy. Has anybody come to you and said, I need you to increase this for me versus decrease something else?
Definitely. And definitely I reckon in the last 10 years, we've really moved into people actively seeking this. And I've had people there, I find there are two different types. The first one is where they know they've got these painful emotions that they know are hampering them or are obstacles, but really what they're wanting is more love. They're not actually so much focused on the painful emotion. They're more thinking, look, if that went, I would have more love. Mm-hmm. I would have more joy in my life, and I would attract more joyful people around me. They're really starting to get it around what I'm emitting is what I'm getting.
Right.
And so they come to me saying, Julia, I just really want to raise my vibration. Right. I want to have more love. Sometimes they want to look for another partner, or they want to improve their friendships or improve their relationship with their parents. Like, they're sort of okay with it, but they know it can be better. And they've equated it to, I know I need to raise my vibration, and I know I want more love in my life. And so I'm going, this is brilliant, because I have moved a lot more in the last couple of years into just working with energy as energy. And so obviously I've been doing all of this myself, which is how I can relate to people at a very deep level when they come to see me. And I've found that my connection to source, or you might call it the 0 point field, universe, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's very strong through my body. And so I can work with my energy, with their energy, with the music and the color and other tools I have. And so I find when I bring through energy into their body, it flushes out their body. Mm-hmm. And they can feel the energy. So I'm playing the music, and I'm using the color rays, and I'm using my own energy and feeding it into their body, and they actually look different. And my theory is intention plays a huge role. Mm-hmm. And so when they've come in with the intention of, I want to raise my vibration, then that is very powerful, because not the ego mind is on board. and it's not fighting, and it's not coming up with all these reasons why you can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas where we're still sort of caught up in, you know, I'm angry, or I'm, you know, I hate someone, or that is, we're still going through that process. When they've come in saying, I want more love, I want to raise my vibration, and I want some energy, give me the energy, Julia, just give it to me. I'm going, great, I can do that for you. And so this is actually working at a whole nother level. And I call this walking the soul's path. So the soul has come in a lot more for them. And the soul is wanting to have pure soul expression a lot more through the physical vehicle and through ourselves. And I find that this is an energetic upgrade. Mm-hmm. And so the vibration is sort of, if you use the David Hawkins scale of consciousness map, they're more above the line of neutrality, up into willingness and getting up in towards the love vibration, but they sort of know it's there and they can feel it's there and they want to move towards it. Mm-hmm. And this is what I can do with the energetic upgrades, is just it creates what I call a shift. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually I find that the energy coming through is working with their DNA. It's working with their actual physical cellular level, where the toxins in our actual cells and in the water in our cells is really flushed out. And then the water in our cells becomes imprinted with a very high vibration. And like even for me in my practice, I am very particular about even the water I drink. So I've looked a lot at the work of Dr. Emoto, the Japanese scientist, who was photographing water crystals, mm-hmm. and water crystals that had that music played in the flat keys that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Which, you know, like AC/DC or metallic or music, the crystals came out very sick looking, if you like, mm-hmm. whereas if he played Mozart and Bach or even spoke I love you to the water, these crystals were just beautiful. And I figured, well, that's what we've got to do with the water in our own bodies.
Right.
It's sort of, you know, it just like added up to me. And so once we start deciding to feed in high vibration energy into ourselves, this is what's going to happen with the water in our bodies. Mm. And we can actually then become emitting lovely, beautiful, loving energy, peaceful energy, and we start to move more into that peace energy where we aren't triggered so much. And if people are sort of acting out around us, we don't fall into that hole of reaction. Mm-hmm. And instead what happens, we just look at them going, wow, like, you know, they've got a big journey they're going through. And maybe if I speak loving kindness words to them, this might actually change the whole course of their day.
Right.
Because I feel very strongly our words are sound. And so what we choose to say is a tremendous impact in the world. Mm-hmm. And so when we choose loving kindness, to be peaceful, you know, as best we can, like we're human, right. But we're choosing that most of the time. You wait and see what happens. I've had the most amazing experiences with people where it's just turned situations right around, where I don't get triggered very easily anymore, and I can then reach out to them. And just by saying, look, are you okay? Is everything okay with you today? What can I help you with something? Or if I just say to them, wow, I just love your shoes. Sometimes I've just said that. They're going, oh, wow, they just changed completely. Oh, wow, they go, oh, thank you so much.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Julia. It's funny that you share that, because I live in San Francisco and we have a lot of, let's just call it, mentally challenged homeless people on the street. And mm-hmm. you find that, you know, they act out a lot of times, mm-hmm. and they'll come at you with what feels like anger and hatred and that kind of stuff. And many times, just as you described, I can diffuse that in a second by just saying something kind. Yes. Yes, it's very powerful, very powerful. And also I find that's my random act of kindness for the day. And also it's putting out what I call good karma, if you like, and or brownie points for living, where I've done my bit as a human being for humanity to improve the world in the way that I can, in my own backyard, in my own world. And
you don't even know what has happened for the rest of the day. Like they may have turned around and gone and done the very same thing with other people that I have not witnessed, and you have that ripple effect.
Right. So let me ask you something. Your therapies are performed in your studio in Australia. So our listeners are pretty global. Are there any practices or therapies that are available to those people without proximity to someone like you?
Look, there's so much you can do for yourself these days. Like when people say that I don't know what to do, I sort of am a bit, amazed in a way because, most people have the internet, and I am assuming they've got the internet, so maybe that's a little unfair. But, even just choosing to be different can be a huge step, and choose to be the best I can be. Just choice in itself is a massive step. But if you really want to have activities to do, there's loads of things you could do. And the first thing I cannot recommend highly enough is meditation. Well, you're actually choosing to take time for yourself. Like that is an act of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
By choosing, I'm going to sit and just be with myself. And I'm just going to wait and see what comes up. And I would highly recommend to have a journal beside you, and you just write down what came up for me today when I sat and was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was your mind went crazy, write down, my mind went crazy. Yeah, and you just think, well, it was crazy right then.
Right.
And when I do it next time, I will aim to have 3 minutes of a peaceful mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have 1 minute, you write down, I have 1 minute of a peaceful mind. Because at the end of the day, we want to feed to our mind, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually nothing wrong with me. What I am choosing, though, is to move towards being the best I can be and move into self-love so I can give more love to other people, because then I know I'm adding value and adding benefit into the world.
There you go.
And that's my contribution for now. So really the greatest benefit with meditation is about learning how to be peaceful. Like I think we've sort of forgotten a bit how to be peaceful. That we're so busy all the time with our checklists and, I need to be doing this and doing that. And our adrenals get activated, and, a lot of us have adrenal fatigue, whereas meditation is going to remind our body what it is, what the vibration is of being peaceful. And then I find it very useful to move from being peaceful into just breathing in self-love. And I actually use and work with the colour pink. So I'll put myself in a pink bubble and I'll just breathe in pink in through the breath. And I'll move my consciousness from my head down into my chest. And so it means that I'm feeling my whole body and I'm not just racing around in my head all the time. And a lot of us only feel our heads. You would not believe how many of us just feel our heads. Really important to feel the whole body. And so when you breathe in through the chest and you're just breathing in that pink and you just breathe in that love, I'm okay. It's okay to love myself. I'm doing the best I can with who I am right now. And just sitting with that, 5 minutes even, just before you go to sleep, can do wonders for you. So that's a really good key. And if you want to go a little bit more active, what I did was I just started doing a lot of research around sound, working with colour, what is a colour ray, about the frequencies as energy of sound and colour, and just starting to understand what is it saying to me scientifically and then visualising those waves actually passing through my body. And I always make this about having fun. It's not like meant to be a job. It's meant to be a process of exploration and fun. And I have found it's even about the people I meet. I meet amazingly fun people. Then I started going to a lot of events where I was exposed to music written in a high vibration, where they'd have some little meditation processes. Then I'd meet some other people who are meditating. And then I found my network of people I was being surrounded by started changing, and I was having some really interesting conversations with people, and a lot of them were into this whole self-love thing and living in kindness. And so you're actually around nice people who want to have fun, kind, loving interactions with you. And so I just found that I was then supporting myself.
Mm-hmm.
by doing that. And, that again is an act of self-love. So then it just starts snowballing when we start to choose to do different activities to what we're doing already. And this means, making time available in our calendar, where I'm making this a priority that I do this at least once a week or whatever it is that suits you. So there's that you can do. But there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. You can look up around raising my vibration or music based on love, self-love meditations. And the last thing that I'd like to offer up that you can do for yourself is actually doing some research around what is the human as an energy being. Because once I started understanding on a more scientific basis, it opened up my willingness to work with that aspect of myself. Because at the end of the day, we need to be working on our physical body. So we're doing a bit of exercise, we're eating, nutritious food that's supporting our organs and our body to function optimally, drinking pure water, then doing some meditation to release emotional stress and to calm down the mind, giving ourselves the opportunity to embrace higher vibration, peace, energy, and then working with our energy field, because that's what I'm doing with all this sound work I'm doing, is I'm running these frequencies through the body, not just for the physical body, but for the emotional body, the mind, and then our energy side, because our neuron pathways and our nervous system is the transference mechanism of energy within our body. And so acupuncture helped me a lot in understanding what is chi energy that moves through our body. So I sort of started with that to try and actually open my mind into receiving and being comfortable with the information of we are also energy beings.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is amazing. Quite inspirational there. I appreciate you offering our listeners some other self-help components that they can practice on their own. So, Julia, your website is innertranquility.com.au, which has really a great deal of really valuable information. Is there any place else that our listeners might be able to hear, watch, or interact with you in videos or anything else?
Well, actually, I am just in the process of creating a new website in my name, so www.juliasmith.com.au, and updating all my services and moving all the information I have on my current website to the new website and putting on a lot more information and more videos, and just sort of breaking it down into some bite-sized pieces that people can work with for a while and then see how they go with that and then move on to another one. So I have that. That's sort of my primary place to go. I'm also on LinkedIn under Julia Smith, and I'm also on YouTube under Inner Tranquility and Peace, and also under my own name, and I'm on Facebook under my own name, Julia Smith. So if anyone would like to connect with me, I'd love to meet you and talk to you and have amazing conversations about how we can be our best self and better ourselves, and, just really encouraging everyone, whether I speak to you directly or just through what I post up, around encouraging us all to just continue on the path of bettering ourselves, because I think that's really where it's at. And it really just opens us up into finding our own unique gift and talents and self-expression that we're bringing to the world. And that is really an incredible offering when we get to that state.
Wow, terrific. Well, thank you very much for offering up all of those points of connection for you. And Julia, it's really been a terrific pleasure to have you on with us on the Emotions Matter podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been great fun, John. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, this is John, and I look forward to you joining me on the next episode of the Emotions Matter podcast.